Zach from Gravel by California, here to give you a first reaction to the first LA Tour race of 2024. If you're unfamiliar with the LA Tourist race, typically you're given a number of checkpoints and you're off to your own devices to make your own route. There's a lot of consternation in figuring out what route to do, and even I'm still working on it. I'll post the route below and I'll update it even right up to the event. Of course, this takes a lot of work, so if you want to hit super thanks or hit subscribe or support us on Patreon, that would be grateful too. At the moment, our route has about 86 miles and a little bit over 11,000 feet of climbing. Hopefully we can still fine tune it and we'll bring up some of the issues that might make me alter while we're out there, but we've got our fly through technology and let's go. As you can see, this ride will be heading up into the San Gabriel Mountains, but of course first we'll start out of Let's Ride Cyclery and hopefully for most end there too. We decided to keep a counterclockwise loop, and there's a few ways to get into Glendale across Kenneth Village, but typically you'll just be going on the south side of the Verdugos for the first few miles and all paved. Now getting up to the Montrose area, typically you would take Verdugo Road going up, and if you're coming down, you would probably take Cañada Road. Another interesting point here is over at Montrose Park. You can grab some water, some reliable bathrooms. There's a lot of stops along the way. This first part you can do it, but it's one I normally hone in on. With a short climb up Hospital Hill, make it down Foothill, and then we kind of circumvent around JPL. This is our first taste of dirt, and probably where the juggling of where you're going to go begins. While it may sound like a typical dirt road, it narrows in a lot of places and there are some brush and a little loose rocks. Not bad, but one thing I like is if you're unfamiliar, you're going to come back down this way. The important part is to not miss the cutoff right here. There should be a little signage to make sure that you kind of know where you are, has a nice view looking back down, but if you're going to checkpoint number 1, you're going to continue up. From here, it's going to turn into Brown Mountain Road where you hit your first checkpoint. One thing I suggest is if you're on the list, there's videos of where the books that you're supposed to tear out your ride number from. So those are always helpful and hopefully everyone places the books back. The bigger issue is how you get back down. If you check our map, we're going to return down the same way that we came. But if you're on a mountain bike, there is the option of doing the Ken Burton Trail, which you can kind of see wiggling in here and then kind of going down across the canyon. I've never ridden it, but I have run it, and I just remember it's being very difficult to do. If you come down this way to try and make yourself go back up to Angeles Crest Highway, it might save you about 4 miles, but if you're Gravel Bike California and not with a mountain bike, I'm just gonna save some of these bullets for later. Just go back the same way I came with the familiar and take it from there. Now, swinging around, getting out, you could go all the way back up to Foothill, but Mesa Gould is probably the best way of getting out, saves you miles. At the same time, it's probably about 500 feet of climbing. But nonetheless, I imagine it will definitely save you time if you're trying to get back before Sunday. Now, heading up Highway 2 or Angeles Crest Highway, at about the 30-mile mark, you're going to hit the Forest Station, which is probably your last chance at water for about almost 40 miles. It's also the entrance to Mount Lukens Road, which is an option which I'll discuss in a couple seconds. Now, continuing up the highway, about another 3 miles, you're going to hit the turnoff to Hoyt Mountain Road. This has been featured in a few other rides before the LA Tourist. I've definitely had a few send-its that have come down this way, but I've never gone up it. Nonetheless, the grade never seems to be too bad. There are some loose conditions, but I think it's a better way to go. Now, as we reach the checkpoint, I just did want to bring up the fact that you could have gone up Mount Lukens Road, which actually saves you about a mile, but also adds a little bit over 100 feet of climbing. You do have a short, probably about 2/3 of a mile descent down to the checkpoint, but the grade at Mount Lukens can be pretty steep. So spreading out the elevation over 6 miles to go this way at Point Mountain might be a better way to save your legs for later. Now, this might be one of the most contentious sections going down Grizzly Flat Trail. Yes, I've never done it before, and I've checked the Strava times, and the fastest down the first 2 miles has been about 10 minutes. So that sounds promising. My initial guess is probably to cover these 5 miles till you hit Condor Peak. It will probably take you about 40 minutes. Whereas if you go around, getting back on Angeles Crest Highway and circling around to Big Tahunga to come back, that's 14 miles just to the east entrance of Condor Peak. This way saves you about 1,100 feet of climbing, although most of that route is on pavement. Coming out of the highway, you've got to make your way up Condor Peak, and yes, Google Maps tried messing around with my route. Quickly, there are 2 ways to get up to Condor Peak. Obviously, you're coming down Grizzly Flat Trail. This is the short way up, although it is hike-a-bike, but it's about 1/3 of the mile to reach the junction over here. Now, if you're coming down from Big T from Angeles Forest Highway, you'll probably enter it around the east side over here, which is about 1.75 miles to reach. Yes, you can bike that part, but I think if you're coming from this angle, you'll save a little bit more time, even though it's less bikey. I meant to do Condor Peak last week, but it was too windy. But thanks to the lowlifes for doing work on here, I know it's a very beloved trail in the area. It's about a 3-mile climb at about 8%. So once again, being able to go up it, and will definitely give you the Recon to come right back down and understand what you're up against. Now, heading further down Big Tahunga, another junction where you have to try and figure things out, but right now I've chosen to climb Gold Creek. It's about a 1,900 foot climb to reach the summit up there, but I think in terms of time and effort, it might be worthwhile. The other option I'll quickly highlight is to kind of go down through the Tahunga area. This will add about 7 to 8 miles depending on how you go. You could either continue down Big Tahunga and then go down towards Foothill and around, or one of my favorite ways to cross is Tahunga Wash, which is a lot of fun to ride, except it's kind of sandy. So you might not be making up too much time just cutting across on the north side of the golf course. Instead, this Gold Creek climb is about 4 1/3 miles up. It averages 8%. It's a lot of fun to go down, but once again, is kind of loose and sandy in a couple spots. I don't think it'll be too much to hurt the climbing, but it'll definitely add to the effort. Now, sweeping around, once you hit Gold Canyon Saddle, it can be pretty feisty going downhill here. Not dropper post ready, but still loose and probably 12-13% in certain parts. One thing you're not going to want to miss is the turn off to Boulder Canyon right here. That is single track. Actually, if you continue down into this area, it's restricted. So you don't want to double make that mistake because you're not going to be able to double back. Now, getting into this checkpoint here, another couple reasons why you probably want to go from Gold Creek Summit is that you will avoid having to double cross Gold Creek here. This small area here is definitely a little hike-a-bike. Not too bad that I would leave my bike behind, but just another thing that would add time. Otherwise, the path is actually pretty fun and might be the last enjoyable part you have for a long time. Now, this is the part that I hate to try and drop to you. The 5th checkpoint up here does not look like fun. Glass half full, it's only about 1 mile up. But look, I can't change the graphics on here. It's pretty steep. What Rive GPS is showing me is the top kilometer of this climb averages 16-17%. I don't know. I don't have a bike geared for that. I know if I brought my trail running shoes, I would just leave my bike there and run, and I would save a few minutes and definitely not be as warped trying to get up or down this. Not too happy about this part. Hopefully, I'll still have sunshine when I reach this area. Leaving this part, hopefully, will take us down Little Tahunga Canyon, mostly downhill the whole way, but more importantly, at the bottom when you hit Osborne, right here is a 7-Eleven. It's new, it's clean, and definitely has lots of fluids. So hopefully this will be about 38 miles total between stops. So for me, I plan on taking 4 full bottles to get me through this area. Now, circumventing Hanson Dam will take you down Glen Oaks, which keep your eye out because it always seems to have glass and debris on there, and then heading up Latuna Canyon. Definitely, if you've never ridden it before, it's pretty quiet for the most part, although cars like to zoom through there, probably in the commuting hours, not so much here. Starts off kind of light, but definitely does pick up towards a part of like where we'll be going off-road. Now, going up the Verdugos is steep from any angle, and while I've never done this trail, I don't think that there's any exceptions. Now, another glass half full moment, it's about 1.5 miles up on this single track trail to get to the checkpoint. It's only 500 feet of climbing, but if you decide to try and save some miles going back over here to Stowe Canyon, it'll save you about 2.5 miles, but this 2/3 of a mile section right here is over 500 feet of climbing. So that's an important mark to just see where you are at this point of the ride if you really want to hoof it up there to save a little. Plus there seems to be a lot of walking traffic here, so our choice is to continue back down to Latuna. Well, from here it's about 10 miles to the finish. Pretty standard. Make our way back onto Glen Oaks, go straight down Hollywood Way. The upper part of Hollywood Way, definitely been improving their bike infrastructure, but kind of like once you pass the Amtrak trains, no bike lanes, pretty fast traffic. Whenever you go in a ride GPS, they always suggest that you take the side streets, either to 1 block over parallel. Of course, please bring lights as a backup. Sunset's around 5 o'clock, and then twilight will last about another 20 minutes. That gives you about 9 hours to complete it, which is kind of iffy considering having to stop, carry your own water, and everything else. So yeah, overall, this is going to be a hoofer. Well, if you have any comments or suggestions, please go ahead, add them below, because we're taking information in by the moment and updating so we can bring you more from the State of Dirt.